On the 13th of November 2022, four University of Idaho students were fatally stabbed in an off-campus residence in Moscow, Idaho, in the United States of America. Now, this three-story home had 6 bedrooms with 2 bedrooms on each floor. Prior to this, there had not been any murder in the city of Idaho since 2015. Fast forward, on the 30th of December 2022, 28-year-old Bryan Christopher Kohberger was arrested in Monroe County, Pennsylvania, on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. This is an ongoing case, and they are still in court pursuing to get a verdict against Kohberger. But this video is going to chronicle everything that happened from the inception of the killings through to where we are today in court, just so we begin to appreciate this case from its genesis to where it has evolved up to on this particular day. Irrespective of what the outcome will be in court, it is evident that the destinies and the fate or the history of these 4 victims, known as the Idaho 4, are forever tied to that of Bryan Christopher Kohberger, whether he's found guilty or not. We are going to chronicle the events as they unfolded and everything in between. So, in the early morning hours of November 13th, 2022, 4 University of Idaho college students were stabbed to death in a shared rental home close to campus. Now, 2 female victims by name Madison Morgan and Xana Kenodo lived at the house, while Kaylee Goncalves recently moved out of the house but returned to the house just to attend a nearby party. The 4th victim, Ethan Chapin, was Kenodo's boyfriend who was sleeping over on the night of the attacks. There were 2 other female roommates who also lived at the house, but fortunately for them, they were not attacked. Earlier on the evening of November 12, 2 of the 4 victims, Chapin and Kenodo, were at an on-campus party at the nearby Sigma Chi fraternity from 8 p.m. to 9 p.m. They returned at 1:45 a.m. and that evening, the other 2 victims, best friends Morgan and Goncalves, had gone to the Corner Club, a downtown sports bar, at around 10 p.m., from which they then left at 1:30 a.m. Please take note of these timelines because they are key. Now, a live-streamed video on Twitch by the Grab Truck, a food truck 4 blocks south at Friendship Square, showed Morgan and Goncalves at 1:41 a.m. chatting and smiling, getting their food 10 minutes later, and leaving to take what the police initially thought was an Uber ride home, a trip of about 1 mile, which is also equivalent to 1.6 kilometers. The police later rephrased their statement to say the ride was provided by a private party arriving home at 1:56 a.m. So all 4 students were home by 1:56 a.m. 7 uncompleted phone calls were made from the phone of Goncalves to her former longtime boyfriend, a fellow student, from 2:26 a.m. to 2:52 a.m. Morgan also called Goncalves' former boyfriend 3 times with similar results, from 2:44 a.m. to 2:52 a.m. These calls were investigated, with the police concluding they did not believe the recipient of those missed calls were involved in the crime. Kenodo received a DoorDash order around 4 a.m. Now, the 2 surviving roommates had returned home by 1 a.m., and original reports stated that both surviving roommates were in their beds on the ground floor at the time of the killings, but were not attacked or held hostage, and that neither woke during the killings. It will, however, be established that the probable cause affidavit for the case said that one surviving roommate was sleeping on the second floor, and that was the same floor as Kenodo and Chapin were on before she was awoken by what sounded like goncalves and hair dog. She later heard a roommate saying something to the effect of, "There is someone here." The roommate believed that this was said by goncalves, although investigators also believed this might have been Kenodo speaking, as a forensic download of her cell phone showed that she was on the app TikTok at 4:12 a.m. The surviving roommate opened her door twice within a short span of time, and the second time heard what sounded like crying coming from Kenodo's room with a male voice saying, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." Security cameras near the home picked up the sound of whimpering, a loud thud, and a dog barking numerous times starting around 4:17 a.m. The surviving roommate opened her door a third time and saw a figure clad in black clothing and a mask that covered his mouth and nose walking towards her. Now, this man, whom the roommates did not recognize, actually walked past her and used the sliding glass door to exit from the room. It is unknown whether the man saw her or not, but then the roommate stood in a frozen shock face and then ended up locking herself in her room. Fast forward, the four victims had been stabbed to death on the second and third floors in the home where they had been in bed. The victims were found not to be gagged or restrained, and the walls at the scene had signs of blood spatter. Morgan and Goncalves were found in Morgan's bedroom, and Kenodo and Chad were found in Kenodo's room. No calls to 911 were made until 11:58 a.m., and this was many hours after the early morning killings. The call made at that time requested aid for an unconscious person and was placed from within the residence using the cell phone of one of the surviving roommates. At the time police arrived, the door to the home was open. There was no sign of forced entry or damage inside the home, and nothing appeared to be missing. The two surviving roommates were in the residence when police arrived, as were other friends of the victims. The surviving roommates had called friends over to the home because they believed one of the second floor victims was unconscious and was not waking up. The identity of the 911 caller was not released, but police confirmed the caller was not considered a suspect. From this point, all four victims were pronounced dead at 12 p.m. Detectives believe the killings probably occurred sometime between 4 a.m. and 4:25 a.m. That night, officers came upon Goncalves' dog, which she shared with her ex-boyfriend, alive and unharmed, at the house. So, all in all, the Idaho Four comprised of Ethan Chapin, 20 years old, of Conway, Washington; Kaylee Goncalves, 21 years old, of Rathdrum, Idaho; Zana Kenodo, 20 years old, of Avondale, Arizona; and last but not the least, Madison Morgan, 21, of Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Chapin was a freshman, Kenodo was a junior, and Goncalves and Morgan were both seniors. Now, on the evening of November 13th, The university cancelled classes for November 14th, and it also scheduled a candlelight vigil to be held on the UI Administration Building lawn on the evening of November 16th, and then postponed it 2 weeks. From the day of the killings, investigators initially said there was no risk to the community, but then 3 days later, however, Moscow police chief indicated that they cannot say that there is no threat to the community for certain. Fall break was scheduled to begin after November 18th, with classes resuming on November 28th. Many students and other Moscow residents, not trusting the initial assurances of the police and fearing for their own safety, began an early Thanksgiving holiday exodus from the area. Other residents who stayed were anxious and cautious, and a number of professors cancelled their classes. Due to weather concerns, the candlelight vigil was moved indoors to the Kibi Dome and held on the evening of November 30th. The fathers of Goncalves and Chapin criticized the limited flow of information from the police and university to the families of the victims. TikTokers, self-proclaimed psychics, and social media users began to speculate and spread rumors and misinformation about the case on social media at this point. And in response, the Moscow Police Department criticized internet sleuths for creating rampant online rumors and disrupting investigations. And in December 2nd news release, he indicated that there is speculation without factual backing, stoking community fears and spreading false facts. And personally, I can appreciate where he's coming from, because for law enforcement agencies, this is one of the challenges that they deal with, especially when it comes to high-profile cases. You have people out there spreading rumors, spreading lies, and some people are so good at fabricating some of these things. It seems so accurate and true until you approach it with objectivity and then confront them for corroborating evidence, at which point you realize that the whole story was made up. There are people like that. So I understand where this chief was coming from. He went on to say that the Moscow police are tracking down rumors and quelling rumors about specific information and specific events that may not have happened, and that it was a huge distraction. So, like I said, I understand him, because they tracking down all these things is also taking away from the time and resources that they should actually be dedicating to solving the case. He went on to indicate that they were not releasing specific details as they do not want to compromise the investigation. From this point, the police also warned that people harassing or threatening those potentially involved with the case could also end up facing criminal charges. And I agree with him too. So from this point, it seemed that the coast was a bit smooth and clearer for investigations to proceed, and rightly so, it did. The investigation of the stabbings was being conducted by the Moscow Police Department and supported by the Idaho State Police and the later County Sheriff's Office. In all, almost 130 members of law enforcement from the three agencies began working on the case. The later county coroner conducted autopsies on the four victims on the 17th of November, and she said that they all appeared to have been stabbed multiple times, with fatal wounds in the chest and upper body with a large knife, although not the same knife but seemingly similar ones. At least one victim, with what were apparently defensive stab wounds on her hands, and possibly more, appeared to have tried to fend off their attacker, and the victims may have been attacked while sleeping in their beds. None of the victims showed signs of any sexual assault. All four deaths were deemed homicide by stabbing. The victims were not tied or gagged, and no weapon had been recovered from the scene, although the police believe the killer or killers used a fixed blade knife. A surviving roommate who saw the suspect described him as a male stranger around 5 feet and 10 inches and not very muscular but athletically built with bushy eyebrows. On the 19th of November, police requested the public provide any video of the house that had been recorded the night of the killings. A phone tip line and email were created for students and others to submit potential evidence to officials. As of December 5th, it was reported that there had been more than 2,600 emailed tips and then 2,700 phone calls and 1,000 digital media submissions from the public to these tip lines. And I tip my hats off to the public on this. Although some of them may be hoaxes, some of them may be exaggerated, some of them may be lies, I think that most of them are actually genuine efforts from the public to help solve this case. And when you have a public this ready and resolved to assist the police, it makes the work of the police smoother and a bit easier and more effective. Because sometimes the smallest of clues could end up becoming what actually breaks a very tight-knit case. So the investigations were still ongoing. And on December 24th, the investigative team reported having received at least 15,000 tips regarding this case. Now, the police initially left open the possibility that there could be more than one perpetrator, with the police stating that they believed it was a targeted attack but had not concluded if the target was the residence or its occupants. Fast forward to the 23rd of November, a press conference was held, and in that, the Moscow police chief said that authorities had received a number of tips, including that Goncalves allegedly had a stalker, but were unable to verify that claim or identify any such individual at that time. After receiving hundreds of tips from the public on December 15th, police then announced that they were searching records for approximately 22,000 fifth-generation Hyundai Elantras made between 2011 and 2013. A camera in the area captured a video of an Elantra around the time of the murders, which investigators noticed had made multiple passes along the same route near the residence. Another surveillance recorded obtained by investigators also showed an Elantra passing by the victim's home 3 times, beginning around 3:29 a.m. And at 4:04 a.m., the Elantra returned to the home for a 4th time. At 4:20 a.m., the car was seen speeding away from the victim's neighborhood. Investigators traced the ownership of this car to a local individual by name Bryan Kohberger, who drove it with his father to the Pocono Mountains of Pennsylvania for the holidays. Kohberger was pulled over twice within a nearly 5-mile radius by Indiana State Police on Interstate 70 outside Greenfield, Indiana, for speeding and tailgating. The FBI denied allegations that they had directed the Indiana State Police to make the stops. Investigators obtained cell phone data that showed that Kohberger's phone stopped connecting to the network around 2:47 a.m. in Pullman on November 13th before reconnecting around 4:48 a.m. near Blaine, Idaho, which is near US Highway 95 south of Moscow. Now, cell phone data also shows that his phone utilized a cell tower near the victim's residence around 9 a.m. on November 13th, approximately 5 hours after the killings. Police also obtained data that indicated that his phone pinged from the cell phone tower nearest the residence at least 12 times between June 2022 and November 13th of the same year. Investigators had additionally obtained a sample of DNA from the crime scene that did not belong to any of the victims. The DNA was found on a tan leather knife sheath on Megan's bed. Using a public genealogy database, authorities identified a partial match to an individual with a familial connection to Kohberger. Investigators then traced the DNA to Kohberger by matching it to DNA found on the trash that was recovered from his family's home in Pennsylvania. So you could now see that the police had done an extensive work and they built it up to this point. Before the arrest, however, investigators monitored Kohberger outside of his parents' Pennsylvania home. He was seen multiple times wearing surgical gloves and observed putting trash bags inside of the garbage can of a neighbor. The items were sent to the Idaho State Lab for testing. Authorities also said Kohberger had, in quote, cleaned his car inside and outside, not missing an inch of an area. According to authorities, a search of the home where Kohberger was arrested revealed a knife, a pistol, and a black face mask, as well as ID cards inside a glove inside a box. At the time of his arrest, authorities found Kohberger in the kitchen dressed in a shirt and shorts while wearing examination gloves and putting trash into separate Ziploc baggies. So you can see that Kohberger is now the prime suspect in this case, but you can also tell that this guy may have a method to some form of intelligence. He seems a bit well organized, he seems methodical, and he seems to know his way around doing certain things with regards to specificity and also not leaving behind whatever he doesn't want to leave behind. Because if the security agencies say things like something has been cleaned inside out, not missing an inch, then it implies that it's been thoroughly cleaned, more than most people will. So you can see that this guy has a level of intelligence, but it will be established later actually that Bryan Christopher Kohberger is actually a PhD student studying no other program other than criminology. So if he wants to do certain things meticulously or get rid of certain things meticulously, he's already studying a program that gives him the knowledge to have a chance at doing so. I'm not saying he's guilty, but given what he's been studying for his PhD, I think he has an advantage over the everyday person as far as crime is concerned. And having to hide something or get rid of something, he has the abundance of knowledge per the program he's taking. So let's look at a little more about who Bryan Christopher Kohberger was. Now, this 28-year-old man by name Bryan Christopher Kohberger was taken into custody by an FBI SWAT team and Pennsylvania State Police on the 30th of December at the home of his parents in Monroe County after he had been observed there for some time. Kohberger was born on the 21st of November 1994 in Albrightsville, Pennsylvania. Shortly after finishing Pleasant Valley High School in 2013, he attended Monroe Career and Technical Institute in Bartonsville but dropped out a year later. Kohberger then attended Northampton Community College in Bethlehem, where he earned an associate degree in psychology in 2018. So take note of these things. An associate degree in psychology. For me, I think it presupposes that this guy has an intelligence in him. He's smart. And the kind of programs he's reading will help make him smarter, actually, if he already wasn't. After graduating from Northampton, he worked as a security guard for the Pleasant Valley School District, and that's the same school district where his father had previously worked as a maintenance worker for many years and his mom for a time as a substitute teacher. He received a Bachelor of Arts in 2020 and an MA in 2022 in Criminal Justice from DeSales University in Center Valley, Pennsylvania. It's important to note that his work as a security guard would also expose him to some form of training, self-defense, and other things. This is not to suggest that Bryan is guilty. In the eyes of the law, he's actually innocent until proven guilty. We are just trying to get to the part where we understand what he has gone through in his upbringing and his exposure, which gives him an edge over the average person as far as this case is concerned. Now, in the summer of 2022, Kohberger moved to Washington State to pursue a PhD at Washington State University in Pullman. Its campus is less than 8 miles west of Moscow. Now, at the time of the killings, he was a doctoral student in criminology and had completed his first semester 9 days before his arrest. So, like I told you, this guy was methodically studying how to be smart from the psychology degree through to criminology. This guy was building a profile, and there are even rumors that he contacted a state security agency and actually attended an online interview for a job in that agency. So you could see that this guy was a bit familiar with what goes into crime, and maybe he wanted to be a crime enforcement officer of a sort, or it was for something else. We can't tell for now, but I'm hoping that all this will make sense at the end of the trial. So he was a PhD student in criminology and had actually finished his first semester just 9 days before his arrest. Kohberger had been a teaching assistant at the Washington State University, and less than 2 weeks before the murders, faculty members met with him to discuss growing concerns about his behavior and conduct. Kohberger was terminated from his teaching assistant role on December 19th, with the decision being based on his unsatisfactory performance as a teaching assistant, including his failure to meet the norms of professional behavior in his interactions with the faculty. So the signs were there. The signs were there. As some people would testify to later, something seemed off. And sometimes I always say that the truth is actually in front of us, just that we might just be too close to it to observe, or we might not be ready to see it as it is. Fast forward, Kohberger was arrested on 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 felony count of burglary, and was appointed a public defender and then detained without bond at the Monroe County Correctional Facility in Pennsylvania. On his return to the county courthouse on the 3rd of January 2023, Kohberger agreed to extradition. 4th of January 2023, Kohberger was flown to Pullman, driven to the later county jail in Moscow, and held without bail. He made his first appearance in the later county courthouse on the 5th of January 2023 and was charged with 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of burglary for breaking into a home with the intent to commit a felony. 1 week later, on the 12th of January 2023, Kohberger made his second appearance for a status conference in the same room at the courthouse. Fast forward to the 17th of May 2023. The later County District Court announced that Kohberger was indicted by a grand jury on 5 charges, namely 4 counts of first-degree murder and 1 count of felony burglary. A preliminary probable cause hearing scheduled for June 26th was cancelled after the indictment. In May 2023, Kohberger also refused to enter a plea during his arraignment. His attorney said that he was standing silent on the charges. The judge entered a not guilty plea for him, and on the 26th of June, the Later County Prosecutor's Office announced that they were seeking the death penalty given the statutory aggravating circumstances of the first-degree murder charges. In the aftermath of this, the University of Idaho president announced that the house where the Idaho 4 were killed was donated to the university and that the house was to be demolished. Scholarships in the name of the three of the victims, namely Kenodo, Chapin, and Morgan, have also been created, and a memorial garden for the victims on the University of Idaho campus is also in the works. As of today, Bryan Christopher Kohberger is still going through his days in court, with his attorney actually seeking to file a case that there is no connection between Bryan Kohberger and the Idaho 4 victims, that this has not been successfully established by prosecutors, and also they are seeking to actually provide or give evidence of an alibi for Bryan Kohberger on the dawn or on the night of the murder of these victims, which will then seek to throw out the case against Bryan Kohberger as the key suspect in this Idaho 4 victim murders. This case has traveled a long way, but I have a feeling that it's still going to travel a bit more longer because there are interesting days ahead per the facts or per the issues that are evolving from it in court. I'm following this case keenly, and as usual, I'll bring you the updates as and when they are due. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet done so, turn on post notifications, share our videos, leave your comments in the comment section. What do you think about this whole case? What are your instincts telling you? Let me know. Till then, stay safe, keep an eye out, and I'll catch you next time.